If you're paying attention to car ads, then you may have already been told that electric vehicles are the way of the future. It doesn't matter if you buy a plug-in hybrid or a full battery electric vehicle, because one thing remains the same: you're helping stop climate change. But is that actually the case? After all, we're talking about ads made by people who want you to buy their product, so it's worth taking the time to double-check their facts. Hi, I'm Nathan. I own a Chevy Bolt, but I still try to walk as often as possible, and this is Save Money, Save the Planet. First, let's address some false facts about EVs which you might have heard before. The production process of electric vehicles means that they're dirtier than ICE cars. Since most electricity is made from coal, EVs aren't actually polluting less than gasoline-powered cars, and the cleanliness of an EV is offset by the pollution when the battery is thrown away. The arguments about the production and the electricity are best illustrated in this infographic from a fantastic study that I found. Yes, the production process of an EV absolutely pollutes more than an ICE car's production. However, this is quickly offset by the lower pollution generated every mile that the EV is driven versus the ICE. So, if you're planning to buy a car to put in a museum, then definitely purchase an ICE car. But if you plan on, driving your car, then an EV is better. This graphic also is a great way to respond to the criticism that electricity is often generated from coal because it shows two things: the current EU electricity mix and their anticipated electricity mix. As you can see, even with the current electricity mix, the EV pollutes less than the ICE car. In fact, this study estimates that the break-even point when an EV and ICE have the same total emissions is, at worst, at 68,000 kilometers, or 42,253 miles. So, if you plan to drive your car past 200,000 miles, then an EV is a way better option. This report also shows how the EU electricity mix is anticipated to change over the years. As they increase their renewables and do a better job of capturing the carbon from their coal plants, the pollution of the EV will only go down as a result. Now compare that to an ICE car, which will always burn some kind of fuel and create emissions no matter what. Yeah, it becomes obvious which car pollutes less. And finally, the criticism that EV batteries will generate waste when thrown away. Currently, many batteries are actually getting dedicated to renewable systems, such as wind farms and solar, because even though a battery's capacity isn't good enough for a car anymore, it can still do a good job of holding excess electricity until the next peak demand. Now, if you want to help more people understand just how false those three arguments are, then hit the like button. That way, this video will get out to a larger audience. But let's get back to the point here, because if those three issues aren't the reason that I'm hesitant about EVs, then what is? Well, firstly, our electricity still needs to be decarbonized. As you can see in the original study that I showed you, there's this little hypothetical situation where the EU has all wind energy, and the effect is cars with 86% less emissions than the ICE cars that many people drive around today. Now, wind energy might not make sense for everyone, but every region does have some form of renewable energy which makes sense for them. Whether it's wind, solar, hydro, tidal, it doesn't matter, as long as it's not a fossil fuel. But we obviously need to help push towards that future. Another thing to keep in mind is how people are still financially motivated to use fossil fuels. My wife still drives an ICE car, so I did some quick math on the percentage of our carbon footprint that car accounts for versus the percentage of our budget. The result? The gasoline for her Corolla accounts for 12.5% of our carbon footprint and only 1.4% of our budgeted expenses. So, if all that I care about is saving money, it's likely that I'll be looking at many different parts of my budget long before I look at replacing the Corolla, despite the fact that it makes up a beefy chunk of my emissions. Another thing that worries me is our ability to recycle lithium-ion batteries. While I am motivated by news of various companies managing to recycle 90% or more of a battery, I'm worried about the cost. Because after all, cost is time and time again the biggest issue which prevents our recycling programs from recycling everything that they can. If you've ever watched any videos on why our recycling programs fail, then you already know this. And if not, I'll link a video by the channel Climate Town in the description, because he does a great job of explaining it, and the dude is hilarious. The next thing which worries me is the driving habits of our general population. I purchased my car used, so I was able to see that the owner before me got 2.9 miles per kilowatt with the car. Now that I've been driving it for a while, I have a long proven history of getting 4.2 miles per kilowatt with the exact same car. That's a huge reduction in the emissions of every mile that my car has driven just because of the way that I drive. But hey, you know what? Just for giggles, let's compare it to the efficiency of an e-bike. A general rule of thumb is that an e-bike will use about 20 watts to go 1 mile. So let's convert that into miles per kilowatt. Let's see, carry the 1. Oh wait, that can't be right. 50 miles per kilowatt? Holy cow. And here we arrive at the biggest thing which scares most environmentalists about electric cars. Cars just aren't as efficient as many other modes of transportation. Sure, they get us where we're going fast, but they reliably also produce more emissions doing it than other modes, such as buses, metros, trains, bicycles, walking. Hey, take your pick. The scary thing once you admit this fact, however, is realizing that we've spent years building our infrastructure specifically around cars, even going so far as to make it less convenient to use other modes of transportation just so that we could make cars more convenient. Alright, now that I've finished giving you things to have nightmares about, let's start talking about solutions. What can you do today in order to help this situation? And can you even manage to pocket some extra money while doing it? First, you should push your local area to rapidly build up their infrastructure for EV charging, public transit, and bicycling and walking. With a little bit of searching, you should be able to find your city's plans to expand each of these areas, and there's usually a comment period. Use it. Communicate to them the things that you do and don't want built in your city. It takes time to build things, but much like planting trees, the second best time to build a bike lane is today. Next, you should spend some time on a map site comparing the different commute options for you to get to work. If work is less than 2 miles away, then you may want to consider a bike or a bus pass. If it's less than 10 miles, you may want an e-bike or a subway pass. And if it's more than that, you may want to look into carpooling with coworkers, taking a train, or a commuter bus. And don't forget about mixing and matching options. Park and rides can be a great way to bike 4 miles out of your commute instead of the whole thing. After lots of research, I settled on a plan to use an e-bike to get to the train station, ride the train to the city where my work is, and then e-bike the rest of the way into the office. At first, the cost of these options may look high, but the IRS forces companies to reimburse employees 56 cents per mile for a reason. When you account for the gas, maintenance, depreciation, insurance, and everything else, driving is actually pretty expensive. So, be sure to compare 56 cents per mile with whatever the public transportation will cost. Personally, I'll save $246 per month by taking the train to work. That's enough to buy 6 PlayStation 5s a year, assuming that they're ever in stock again. And if a car is really the only option that works for you, then you should consider getting an electric vehicle for your next car. When I bought my EV, I found that I would save $800 a year on fuel costs alone, which quickly made up for the extra money that it cost over buying a similar ICE car. Alright, don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss my next video. But until then, I'm just going to hang out in the comments. I want to see what cool ideas you guys have. Now go make a difference today.